You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Oh, God. All right. Hello, everybody. This is Matt, and I'm sitting here with Bob.
Hello, everybody.
And we are out at the Point of Woods, the Lee's Shattered Army Wayside Marker, out in front of the Virginia Memorial. We are under the yoke of COVID-19 oppression. And so we are out here in the wide open air with 6 feet between us all because we are responsible podcasters. And yeah, that's about it. It's good to be out of the house. How are you handling this, Bob? I know you're old and scared.
I was cleaning the shed when you called me and said, come on over here.
Trying to keep busy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, not just trying to keep you. I'm writing a lot.
Writing your novel.
And enjoying. Seeing it as an opportunity to just slow down and get to know my wife better. We spend more time together.
Sure.
now.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people are saying stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, some people are certainly very angry that they have to spend so much time with their children. To which I say, why did you have them in the first place? And other people are, they're making lemonade when they're given lemons, and sure. I think that's important to do. I'm trying, but you know what my problem is? My problem is, Bob, that when I have nothing but time, I don't know where to start. I have so many things to do. Like when I'm working, and I have a fixed schedule, all I'm thinking about is what else I want to do. And, the things that really mean something to me.
Right.
And so when I get my free time, I know exactly what I'm going to do, and I make the most of it. But when you have nothing but free time, that's really hard. Because I got 60,000 different things that I could do that are far more interesting than, work.
But
this
you want to do
included.
something that's meaningful. And that's why we're sitting here right now on this hallowed ground of Gettysburg.
That is right.
And you make lemonade today. It's a little chilly lemonade.
Yeah, it was nice before, and then these clouds came in, and now
but I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting
Codie,
one. This is Codie
I just
H.
met, but I already like. He's already given me a lead on another angle I can take on the
your book.
Story I'm writing. Yeah. So
but let's introduce him right now. Codie H. He is the Visitor Services Coordinator at the Seminary Ridge Museum. You can find him on Facebook, Codie H. Writer and Historian. He also contributes to Pennsylvania in the Civil War. That's Rich Condon, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, I had Rich Condon on.
Kendrick Gibbs. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And also he's on Battles and Banter podcast, which I keep meaning to have Avery on, but we have yet to do that, but we will someday soon, I promise you all. Okay, so Codie, you were supposed to do a winter lecture at the Visitor Center on, what was it, January, what'd you say?
January 18th.
18th was the first one, but it was canceled or postponed.
Yeah.
Due to the threat of snow.
Yep.
And I think that was the one winter weekend we had all winter.
Yep, pretty much.
So they said, don't worry, we'll do it on March 28th, which was last weekend, right?
Yeah.
And
2 days ago.
Just 2 days ago, that's right, yeah. And of course, now we have the coronavirus that threatened that, and so the visitor center is closed. I offered this to all of you guys. Chris, I told Chris if everybody wants to come and record their lectures, they were going to do it or whatever. I know you guys work really hard on this stuff. I was looking at your outline. It's a lot of information, and so I'm glad that I could give you a platform to let it see the light of day.
Yeah, thank you very much for that.
What is the title of
the title
lecture?
Is partly a quote, "Pray for Oblivion to his memory, Frederick Douglass on the legacy of Robert E. Lee."
I thought this was very interesting, and it was one of the lectures I was really looking forward to actually seeing, because I think it's kind of poignant. In the last couple of years, Lee has come up again, and now we're supposed to hate him. It's funny how it seems like throughout history, it's either Lee is revered or Lee is hated or reviled, I should say, and back and forth and back and forth, and it seems to have started with Frederick Douglass, from what you're saying. Tell us a little bit about this, why you're doing this.
I would say, generally speaking, our memory of the Civil War is very cyclical, I think is a good word for it. Every time that calls for taking down of monuments or erasure of flags. Every time that comes up, everyone always says, why is this the first time this is happening? And I think the lesson in it all is, regardless of your opinion on the matter, it's usually not the first time that has happened. We're talking about a civil war, which was inherently itself a controversial thing, and so it's only natural that our legacy and memory of it should itself be rather controversial. In terms of Douglas, I don't know that he was the first or that he really started it, but I would say that in terms of a famous figure really giving people a grounds for which to maybe question the veracity of Lee's greatness or being held as this Southern or American icon, he's probably the first person who really does that to a great degree. He is arguably the most famous black man probably of the 19th century. There's a lot of recent research over the past few years. He might have been the single most photographed American of any 19th century figure.
I read that in your
figure.
notes, yeah.
Yeah.
More than Lincoln.
More than Lincoln,
Interesting.
yeah.
And why? By virtue of what?
By virtue partly of the fact that he wanted to be photographed. He was in some respects a figure of vain.
He was the
respects.
Conway Kanye West of his day.
Yeah, in some respects. But he was just based on his life story as well. He is kind of the Civil War in its entirety in the microcosm of one person. When you think about Frederick Douglass, he's born into slavery. He escapes to his own freedom. He becomes this abolitionist, anti-slavery speaker who may have spoken to more audiences and more individual people than almost anyone of the 19th century. His touring schedule rivals that of a modern musician. I mean, he is speaking hundreds of nights per year, usually to sold-out audiences of hundreds of individuals.
Well,
and so,
just give us a little background there. So, to people that might think that back in the olden days, like, nobody did anything, there were no entertainers, there was no any kind of anything exciting except for maybe the local playhouse or whatever. That's not true. Like, people would tour as speakers, and so Frederick Douglass is one of them. But let's just go back a little bit in his life. So he's born into slavery. He escapes. Where does he escape to?
Sure. So he's born on the eastern shore of Maryland, 1818. When he escapes, he's age 20 in 1838. By then, he had been enslaved in Baltimore. He is going to escape first to New Bedford, Massachusetts, by way of New York. That's where he gets married. And ultimately, when he gets to New Bedford, he kind of falls under the tutelage of William Lloyd Garrison, famous abolitionist figure. This is
the Liberator.
Exactly. The Liberator newspaper is his kind of engine of getting his voice out. Now, an interesting piece of Douglass's life is that period with Garrison. Really, two major events happen. One is the publication of his first memoir, Narrative of Frederick Douglass, an American Slave, published, I believe, 1845. The other thing that happens while he's with Garrison is Douglass develops this very sort of anti-constitutionalist way of resolving slavery. What I mean by that is Garrison felt that to end slavery in America, you could not work within the confines of the Constitution or the political system because it allowed slavery to exist.
Right.
So he feels that you have to attack it from the outside in, using rhetoric above all else. Douglass will self-exile, in essence, when he publishes his first memoir, because he named names and places of people who could have done him harm or re-enslaved him if they read what he said and did.
And what is he writing them out? Like, saying what?
So he's talking about treatment. He's talking about specific individuals. He's talking more than anything about where he went and what he did in the process.
So he's like former master?
Former master Thomas Auld, especially, which is an interesting piece because when Douglass is in Europe, there's a group of English abolitionists who officially purchase his freedom, and Douglass becomes a pen pal, kind of a friend of the Auld family who once enslaved him. A fascinating angle of the story. But more than anything, more than kind of ratting other people out, he tells his own story, and that puts himself in peril.
Incriminates himself.
It incriminates himself if he specifically says, I came to New Bedford, Massachusetts, well, if I'm a slave catcher.
Right, because even before 1850, there were fugitive slave laws.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep. So, yeah, slavery is, illegal in most northern states, but fugitive slave laws are in effect. And so perfectly within the realm of possibility and legality to come north from Maryland and re-enslave Mr. Douglass.
And that's why he flees to England.
Exactly. So he goes to England, where abolition is the law of the land. While he's there, he becomes kind of this cosmopolitan figure in Europe. People are very much in favor of a black man having the voice that he does. And while there...
Because Europe, so where in Europe does he go to? England?
Mostly England. Yeah, he goes to Ireland and Scotland for a time as well.
So what is England, Ireland, Scotland's relationship to African slavery at that point in time?
Wilberforce. Sorry,
Pardon?
back in the 1830s, England is going to abolish slavery.
In the 30s.
Yeah.
So by the time he's over there, it's gone.
It's gone for about a decade and change. Yep.
Okay. So it's all the rage now, being free. Everybody loves it.
Yep.
So he's over there, and they want to hear about what it's like over in the Americas or in the United States. What's the attitude in England at that time towards the United States? Do they like us?
Yeah, I would say, they're certainly allies on the whole. But I think it's interesting if you fast forward just kind of as an example during our Civil War, when the Southern Confederacy is attempting to enlist the assistance of England. By that point, 30 years or so removed from abolition in that country. One of the key, hinge points for not supporting the Confederacy after, say, the Battle of Antietam is because of the Emancipation Proclamation coming into effect here. And so, in the 1830s, 1840s, Douglas in England, during that time period is kind of the roots of that general anti-slavery fervor. And so these are two countries that are working together, the United States and England, for example, but on those kind of moral, political points, certainly at odds with one another, with at least the southern half.
So it's kind of like how we are with China today. Like we work together, we have some trade deals and things like that, but their human rights is not exactly. We don't see eye to eye on certain things. It's kind of the same idea.
Comparison, yeah. I would have to look more at the kind of
I'm sure when you get into the details, it's not
exactly. Yeah.
It's not the same.
Yeah.
But just for people. Okay.
Sure.
So go ahead then. So he's over in England. He's speaking. He's becoming a celebrity over there. When does he come back to the United States?
Comes back, I believe, after 3 years there. So this coincides. Pretty much, he's there during the Mexican-American War.
And his freedom was purchased, was it not?
Yep, and that's sort of what prompts him to return. It's safe to return by that point in time.
Who purchased his freedom?
It's a group of English abolitionists who, after basically hearing a story, I would assume reading his book by that point in time, he goes on the speaking tour, and it'll be purchased officially on behalf of him from these English abolitionists.
Okay, so continue.
Sure. So he returns to the United States. While he was abroad, looking from the outside in, from across the Atlantic Ocean, Douglas seems to have had this moment of realization that William Lloyd Garrison's politics on slavery probably would not work. And so when he returns to the United States, he sort of has this clean break from Garrison. He'll kind of reestablish himself not in Massachusetts, but now in Rochester, New York, which becomes effectively his adopted hometown for roughly the next 30 years or so. And while there, he will eventually edit 3 newspapers that he owns. First, it starts with the North Star, probably the most famous of Douglas's newspapers. Then he has Frederick Douglass's paper, and then eventually Douglas's monthly. And while he's in Rochester, while he's publishing those newspapers, Douglas becomes very much forthright in his insistence that the United States has to constitutionally abolish slavery, whatever form that would take. But he knows that now you have to work within the confines of the political system. You have to effect change in government. It can't come from the outside in. It had never worked. And so now he realizes that anything, and he incites perhaps it will take war. He mentions that on a few occasions. And by the eve of Civil War in 1861, he is sort of praising the fact that the United States now is going into armed conflict with the portion of the country where slavery was largely still legal.
Is that because he's finally come to the realization that it's going to take something like that in order to change it?
Yeah, exactly.
Because he kind of becomes buddies with John Brown, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. So in the 1850s, when John Brown is kind of rising to prominence, he will meet with Douglas. And one of those meetings occurs nearby here in Chambersburg. This is as Brown is kind of promoting and planning his raid in to Harper's Ferry. Brown had lived for a brief time in Chambersburg at a boarding house, takes on a fake name and a fake identity, and while there he procures a lot of supplies, and he meets with Douglas. He invites Douglas to meet with him at a culvert, at a ravine. There's a state historical marker there today at the approximate location where they congregated, and it's there that...
Hello, Getty's Nerds. It's Matt, and I hope you enjoyed that preview of our premium content that can now be found over at patreon.com. I just want to let you know that Addressing Gettysburg will always have free content for you to listen to in the forms of our narrative episodes like Antietam to Chancellorsville and the upcoming episode entitled Invasion, June 1863, appendix episodes, and our wildly popular Ask a Gettysburg Guide episodes. But episodes like Antietam to Chancellorsville take months to produce, as things are now. I hear from people almost every day asking how long until the next episode is finished. And the answer is, when I have the time, I can do it. Your support at Patreon can cut down the time it takes to produce an episode by months. Maybe you don't care about that. Maybe the Ask a Gettysburg Guide episodes are what you like, but they leave you wanting to learn more. Well, fear not. More is what Patreon is all about. Patrons receive access to new premium episodes each week. These episodes are straight interviews or discussions with licensed battlefield guides, rangers, local historians, academics, authors, public historians, people from the Gettysburg community who do impressive things, and frankly, just about anyone who can talk on a subject related to Gettysburg. I want to make sure that the interest you already have in Gettysburg is enriched with our premium content. Your support means the world to me, because that means it will be easier to produce content that will bring Gettysburg to more people and, hopefully, more people to Gettysburg. And the podcast episodes are just the beginning. So please go to patreon.com/addressinggettysburg. That's patreon.com/addressinggettysburg and become a patron. I thank you in advance.